Zane Banks here, and today I'm going to do a lesson on chord melody playing. It's something that I've noticed a lot of guitar players get very confused about. In fact, I was very confused for a long time until I really decided to tackle it a number of years ago. It's probably one of the harder forms of improvising to sort of initially get your head around, but once you can break it down into a couple of different categories, it's not too bad. So I'm just going to look at it in the context of dominant seventh chords in this lesson, but any of the theory that we cover in this lesson can be applied to major sevenths and minor sevenths and so forth. And I'll do subsequent videos on those. But I think dominant sevenths are probably the best place to start. So the thing that I think a lot of people are confused about is, what do you do when they hear Wes Montgomery do a chord melody solo? It almost just seems like the bandwidth of our mental capacity is just explodes. But it is, in theory, relatively straightforward. You have a very simple melody and you harmonize that melody. That is really all that's happening. The melodies that you would play if you're doing single note lines are far more complicated than what you would do in a chord melody sort of style. And a good source for the type of melodies that you want to try and seek out what's known as like shout choruses or like bassy style melodies. So these are the songs you would hear in Count Basie big band tunes, say after the vocalist has sung a verse and the whole orchestra plays a very simple melody. And the reason it has to be a simple melody is that if you have 16 horns playing everything at the same time, it just sounds too heavy, too full on. So you need to have a very simple, punchy melody. And anything that's very fast, you might find that they harmonize every second or third note. Otherwise it's like you're emphasizing every single syllable and it's too much. So with that said, if we apply that to the guitar, there's a little bit of theory that you need to know. And essentially the theory goes a little bit like this. The melodies that you're going to play are always going to be the top note. As a general rule, it should be the top note of a chord and you harmonize down from that. I would keep all of your melodies as much as possible on the high E string and on the B string. Occasionally you might get on the G, but generally speaking, I wouldn't touch any of the other strings. It becomes too murky otherwise. The best place to start is to pick a key. So for the purpose of that, let's just choose the key of D. I did my intro in D. So we're thinking in terms of D7. Now on the E string and on the B string, you want to find all of the notes that are in a D7 chord. So going from the first fret up to the 12th fret, the first note in a D major chord on the high E string is the second fret. That's an F sharp. That's the third. Very important note. The next one is the fifth, which happens to be on the 5th fret. That's an A. The next one is the flat 7, which is on the 8th fret. That's a C. And then you have the tonic again. Now if we do that on the B string, the first one we have is the flat 7, which would be the 1st fret here. It's a D. Then we have the tonic. Then we have the major third at the 7th fret. Then we have the 5th up at the 10th fret. What you need to do then is you need to find the chord voicings that will harmonize those notes. Okay, so the first one would be like a D7 using this shape. Then the next one, I tend to use just 4 notes per chord, occasionally 3, would be a D7 in this shape. It's like the top note of a 9th chord. Then the next one to harmonize the flat 7 is going to be this version of a 9th chord. That's 7D, 9G, 7B, 8 high E. And then for the tonic, it's going to be this one, which is 10D, 9G, 7B, and high E at 10. When we look at the B string, there's not really that much you can actually do with the 1st fret. Theoretically, it is the flat 7, but I can't really harmonize anything there. So the first note I'm going to play is the tonic, and I would play it like this. So that's 3A, 4D, 4G, and 3B. And the next one is just our regular D7 chord, and then for this we're getting, looks like a half diminished chord, but it's actually a ninth. So that's 9A, 10D, 9G, 10B. Now once you know that stuff, that means that all of the essential notes in the key of D you can play with different versions. You can actually come up with some cool melodies just based on that. You know, it might be something like but after a while you start to run out of melodic ideas. So this is where the next really interesting thing comes in. We have harmonized the first degree of a scale, the third degree, the fifth degree, and the seventh. So that means within a scale we're missing 2, we're missing 4, and we're missing 6, also known as 9, 11, and 13. So what we can do about that is all of those notes that we haven't harmonized, you can either put a diminished chord on those degrees. That's what Wes tends to do most of the time. So you end up playing a whole scale. I'm going to do a D scale on the high E string, but I'm going to start on the third just so I get all the chord tones. So I'd get this, then the fourth degree with a diminished chord, then I'm doing the major 7 here, like that. Or you could just play the 2, 4, and 6, or 9, 11, 13 as an upper extension to the chord you're already holding. Both will work. The theory with doing the diminished chord is essentially what you're doing is 1, 3, and 5 are harmonized with the tonic, and 2, 4, 6, or the same as 9, 11, 13 are harmonized with the 5 chord. So you're getting this 1, 5 constant tug of war, which creates tension, therefore drama, therefore interest. But it sounds particularly interesting in music when you mix those two up. So that means we could now come up with some very simple melodies and harmonize them in a variety of different ways, and it would sound cool. So for example, let's do one that goes, it's a nice simple. So we'd harmonize it with our tonic. Then we're going to slide in to and the A that is the next note, rather than going to this version, I'm just going to grab it with my index finger, because going is a bit tricky. So now this 13th, which is a B, rather than going, I like the sound of it. You sort of, but both would work. If you do any fast passages, it's cool to just harmonize all of those with a diminished chord. So there are lots of things that Wes does where he might do like a bluesy kind of thing, and they're just too fast to change chord shapes, and it sounds again too stodgy, too heavy. So doing the old diminished trick for a fast passage is totally cool. But if you're going to linger on a chord, you really should follow the rules outlaid before, otherwise it would just sound a little bit clunky. That in theory is all you really need to do. In practice, obviously it's a little bit trickier, because you need to, at just a moment's notice, know where all of those chord voicings are in any key, in any chord sonority, and then come up with different melodies. But that is essentially what is happening when you hear Wes doing it. Now we're just talking about a static chord, mind you. Things become a little bit more complicated when the chords change. So even if you're looking at a 2-5-1 in the key of D, that would be E minor like this, and so you would have to harmonize it in such a way that you were doing E minor melodies harmonized with E minor chords and the 5 of E minor, and then when you get to the 5 it would be an A7 harmonized with A7 melodies or A altered melodies, and then it would go to D major, which we've covered more or less. So these are things to keep in mind. I'll do another video where I'll show you a couple of different licks based upon the theory behind this, but that's essentially what's happening when you hear great chord melody solos by Wes Montgomery. Ones you hear in Full House. He does most Wes solos. He usually tends to do single notes. Then he'll go into octaves, and then he'll do chord melody stuff. Unit 7, the live version, he does some cool stuff. The live concert he does with Wynton Kelly, I think swinging at the half note. I think the first track's called like No Blues or something. Amazing chord melody solo. So just look, persevere with it, and listen to as much Wes as you can, and try and commit to memory the different chord voicings and where you'll find those essential notes from the chord, and then fill in the gaps with diminished chords, and that's a start. So please give me a follow on Instagram at the Rev Dr. Z. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel for more free lessons on guitar technique, improvising, theory, technique. And please follow me on Facebook, where I've got a little bit of a forum going there where people can sort of interact and ask questions about playing guitar and just nerd out. Thank you very much, and stay tuned. I'll catch you next time.